In today's video, I almost miss the start. I get a gap. And I almost get dropped. I managed to set everything up just in time for the start of the race. Luckily, the start is not too hard. You can see the profile of today's race on the top right. It is a rather short race with only 20k, but in the second half there's a significant incline. One thing to note is that the last 1.5 kilometers are not too steep, with only 4%, so it is draftable. Before the KOM banner is a short downhill followed by a short section with up to 12%. This is really tricky since it is basically a sprint just after a KOM. In addition, there are some very strong riders in today's race, from teams like Beast Mode or Dragons. It is the fourth stage of the Zwift Games and the race takes place Monday 6 PM. I have two goals. First, I want to test a theory on how to get in a breakaway. I always try to sprint to get a gap from the group, but in the last few races I saw that some people just increased their power slightly and still got a good gap. Since the start is relatively flat, I want to try it for myself, and maybe just push through. To get a win from a breakaway is very unlikely due to the strong group however, but to get a gap would be very nice anyways. Secondly, I want to make the race as hard as I can for the sprinters on the KOM. Ideally, I would like to drop the sprinters and thin out the group. After the first few kilometers, I slightly increased my power as planned. I should get some additional draft from the downhill. In addition, other riders might think that I just have a bit too much momentum due to the draft, but I keep my power up even when I'm at the front of the group. Notably, I'm not sprinting, I'm merely doing 6 watts per kg in comparison to 4.5 watts per kg. This is still enough to get a small gap without anyone trying to close it. I keep up my power and the gap widens. It goes up to 7 seconds. In a race with less competition, this could be enough to win, but not here. At the sprint, some riders from the main group increased their pace and the gap gets smaller again. Since I didn't really think that I could win from a break, I reduced my power to cut my losses. It was still a very interesting experience and more successful than to push high powers to get a gap. At the beginning of the hill, I try to set the pace and be up front, but I quickly realize that I'm not nearly good enough to compete with some of the other riders, so I drop back to the pack and wait for the coming attack. I expect it to happen after the final right turn, with about 1.5k to go. Right now we are at the last steep section of the climb. The group is already small. I see that the first rider uses his feather power-up. Even if he does not want to attack, other riders will expect it and increase their pace as well. So I get ready for a push. The pace picks up and I struggle to hold the wheel. I almost get dropped, but I manage to stay with the group. Just after we passed the KOM banner, the next sprint can be seen. I'm lucky that I got a feather this time and use it to make it easier. On the top, I didn't push to close the gap to the first few riders, since I thought that the group would get them relatively easy. But they do a really good job on the downhill and eventually get a gap of about 30 seconds. I think I could have closed the gap to them on the top and would have gotten an easy top 3 position, but that is no longer an option. In our group there will be a sprint finish. We arrive at the sprint with a large group. I expect that most of them are better sprinters than me. In addition, I did not conserve my energy very well during the race, so I just tried to do as good as I can without much expectations. I think I could have started the sprint a bit earlier, but I still managed to not get last in our group, so that is not too bad for me. Overall, I'm quite happy with the result, especially in a race this competitive. Thank you very much for watching.